By the way, it's interesting that you mentioned that because then Alex asks, some students find it difficult to put a chunk in a sentence. Why is it so? Let's dwell on that a little bit more. You said that it's of course a lack of let's put it that way, repeated exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Yeah, so first of all, this is repeated exposure, and I would say that this should be some kind of limited exposure. Of course, you do not expect elementary students to listen to some BBC podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So this should be something graded. It's one thing. Another thing I might assume, again, lack of understanding. Because if you understand the chunk, it means that it becomes yours, right? As you mentioned some time ago. And if it hasn't become, it means that maybe there is some lack of understanding. Maybe students don't really have an idea of how it works. And most importantly, I often kind of preach to my students and I bombard them with one and the same idea. Whenever you're learning a lexis item, please imagine a situation in which you could use that. Why is this important? Because one thing is that it's personal significance, and we know that when we feel that something is significant, our brain kind of, okay, I need that, so we get to memorize this. It's one thing. And another thing is that you kind of shorten your path to success. Because sometimes you have an item, it looks beautiful, okay, I should take it for myself, but you have no idea of how you can use this.
Yes.
And it means that not only do you have to kind of memorize this chunk, but you also later on have to think about the situation. And sometimes you do not. And this is where the glitch starts, right? So whenever you are kind of, learning something, please think of the situation in which you could use that. For example, I can again take a look at my random list. So I have this, he chafed at the idea of promotion, kind of he was irritated. And I loved it so much because I often chafe at so many ideas you can't even imagine. And I can say that sometimes I chafe at the idea of, reducing some time spent in my English, which my relatives want from me, right? I chafe at the idea of having more day offs in my schedule or something like that, and that's nice. And you kind of it becomes yours, right? So this is
exactly.
This can be an obstacle to you, right? Again, lack of exposure, lack of understanding of the meaning, and lack of understanding of the use. So students don't understand how they can use this. For example, if we are talking about this, I was born in Moscow. You can teach your students, okay, when you complete some, questionnaires, you often might write something like that, okay? Or when you're talking about your biography, you can use this. So you kind of, you put your students into this understandable context. And I think it boosts the chances.
Yeah, this kind of autonomy is what is important. Like, let them play with the words. Yeah, let them feel the phrase. Let them ask questions about it. Yeah, maybe some ideas will conjure up, right? And by the way, it also helps a lot with this so-called co-text, right? That, for example, can be read about in the Teaching Lexically book, right? As far as I know, from what I get, I would say I understand co-text is this language that occur around a particular item, right? Which means, for example, when you teach your students some phrases like thank you, what do you expect to hear? You're welcome, not at all, don't mention it, you got it, no biggie, always, whatever, right? This is called co-text, yeah? When you say, can you do me a favor? You also expect something like, sure, go ahead, or I'm sorry, I'm busy now. So you might want to consider teaching phrases with some sort of, expected language, I would say, yeah, in a way, because this is how it works, right? Or, for example, when it comes to learning or teaching learning English at a elementary level, or teaching students at A1, you could think of a certain phrase that you may start with, yeah, and go from there. For example, sometimes we can talk about an argument, yeah, when we discuss relationships. You could say, you can pre-teach this phrase, have an argument, and then you can think of what kind of stages those two people go through when they have an argument, right? Literally, you can elicit some language, right? They make a lot of noise, they speak in high volumes, which is a good chunk, right? They might be at each other's throats, yeah? They might end up fighting, physically, yeah? They might report on someone, whatever, for example, right? Or they may just end up amicable, you see? So this is what you can do, to make sure that your students understand in which situation a certain phrase or word works, right? And
Absolutely.
also teach phrases along the way,
Yeah,
right?
right. You know, now even I have, I'm working on my new project now. I mean, this is kind of lexical kind of little textbook, and it's kind of devoted to healthy lifestyle. So this is Lexis we can use to talk about healthy lifestyle. And you know, the thing I've decided to open the file with is, you know, the number of problems we face. Kind of information overload, stress, and all that stuff. Again, so this is healthy lifestyle, and supposedly it should be something like, you know, do fitness regularly, join yoga classes or something. But I've decided to start with problems we face today. We have this barrage of information, and we feel exhausted, we feel the burnout. Why? Just because let's imagine how we talk about healthy lifestyle in real life. We usually say something, you know, I have backaches. That's why I've decided to join yoga class.
Right.
So usually we talk about some problems that have forced us to go healthy on eating and whatever. And this is exactly it. So that's why whenever you teach your students something like, you know, join yoga classes, teach them backaches, it will help them. That's for sure.
Exactly. And you don't even need lists. If you're a really well-versed teacher when it comes to vocabulary, they will flow from your mouth, like literally. Because again, another interesting thing to remember, repeated exposure to the same item speeds up both learning and fluency, which we will talk about, right?
Exactly.
For sure. By the way, another good question, how many chunks per lesson would you recommend to